Hey guys, it's Wyvern, and today I'm just doing a little video about how to use Reason Rack for beginners, and I'm going to be sharing some tips and tricks that I know, and yeah, hopefully this will help you finally get into Reason and making Reason basses if you've never used it before. So here I just have a basic rhythm drum pattern. Yeah, nothing really too special, just something simple to start off with. This is basically how I like to start all my rhythm songs, is I usually just write like some simple drums and then I make them more complex later on once I've developed a bass flow that I like. So the first thing I like to do is I just like to lay down some MIDI notes real quick, just on a quarter note pattern, and I usually like to write for D sharp. It's usually my favorite key to write in. If not, then I usually go with G. But I'll just do D sharp today. So here we have Reason Rack, and when you open it straight away, you'll have your most commonly used devices. So there's two ways you can start. You can either click on Malstrom here or Subtractor, depending on what you're wanting to use, or you can go devices on the side here, go instruments, and there's all these instruments you can pick from. But today I'm just going to be using Malstrom because
it's the best, like, for rhythm.
I'm just going to explain what kind of everything does here so that you'll understand when I'm turning certain knobs and stuff. Here to begin with, you have your oscillators. So if you've ever used like Serum or Vital or any other sort of synthesis plugin, this is basically your two oscillators. They don't have any random phase. They're completely mono. And so you have all these different wavetables to choose from, and the thing that makes Malstrom unique is that it's a grain table synthesizer. So basically you have 128 different index values here, and the motion controls how fast the index values are swept between. They're all crossfaded together. So if you listen to like square 4 right here, there's all these different indexes right here. And so the beginning is kind of like the phasey part. Around about here is like the tonal. And around here is the crunchy part. Also, around about here you have your scent control, semitones, octave, and then you have a formant shift knob, which can be a bit of a creative tool to make unique timbres for your basses. Over here we have our modulators. Now these can be used to modulate different things like the pitch, the shift, or you can use it to modulate the index. By default it is not on sync, but you can turn it on sync and then chuck it on like a quarter note. I usually like to go sine or like one of these slope type shapes. And then what I usually like to do is on mod B here, this allows you to control the motion amount, the volume, the filter, and modulator A. So what this means is that every time this goes upwards and hits its peak, it'll modulate all the values here by however much you select on here. So basically if I have these all the way down, and then I have something like this where I'm just making this go quarter notes, you can hear if I have this off, it'll sound dramatically different, and then it sounds more if you do it up that way. That can be a very creative tool. As well as that, the motion knob here is very good to automate for these square 4 basses. It kind of means that while the index is being swept through super fast, it'll actually pause or like slow down at a certain point. So you can use this to freeze it at like the crunchy bit. Just having a little bit of modulation negative with the motion. Before the Malstrom goes out, it goes through a few different areas. So from the oscillator, you can see these little buttons right here. And basically this leads into this shaper, and then the shaper will go into the filter, or it can go through filter B first and then into the shaper. Or oscillator B can go into the filter and then into the shaper and then out filter A, or it can go just out of filter B. It really depends on how you want to route it. So if you have these on, they will work, but if you have them off, they will be bypassed. So you can hear that I have this filter on, but it's not going through the shaper, so it's not going to pop through just yet. The moment I route that to the shaper, even though the shaper is not on, it just bypasses straight to filter A. And you have the shaper settings, which are kind of just some distortion and some noise. I don't really use these too much. I usually just bypass it straight to the filter because I like to do my distortion later on. But I do know that lots of people like to use this and just add like a subtle amount of distortion in. So yeah, here you just have like your classic low pass. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use modulator B to modulate the filter right here. It's got like a classic low pass or something like comb. For comb, I like to use keyboard tracking in case I change the notes and I want the filter to be in the same position, but like relative to the note that's being played. If you turn on keyboard tracking and then chuck it like here, hear that feedbacky sort of sound, and then if you modulate the filter using mod B here, you get some really cool tones. And where it becomes interesting is where you incorporate something like pitch right here and just add a little pitch automation and then make it go like 2/4 or something like that. So you get something like that. And if you want to get even more creative with it, you can actually use the filter envelope. Now, this is toggled on by clicking this button right here, and you basically control the modulation amount using this knob here. And then you have your filter attack, filter decay, sustain, release, standard ADSR, and you also have an invert button if you want to invert the amount instead. So usually I like to just put these all the way up and then up the attack. But yeah, you can get really creative with it. And so getting back onto this section right here, you have your standard envelopes right here, which I probably also just should have covered earlier. And then right here, you have your pitch wheel, which you can set the pitch bend range right here. You have your portamento, which controls your pitch sliding. So if you have something like this, can be pretty fun to mess around with. Right here you have the mod wheel, and basically what the mod wheel allows you to do is you can set a few different things to the mod wheel and have this little wheel control something in your patch. So people usually like to attach index or the filter. I usually go for filter, and you can attach a very small amount so that you can move the filter even tighter than you would be able to with just automating this. So you can go like and just have very slight automations. Now, I am going to show you something really quick, which is very important to learn, and that's how the routing actually works in Reason. So on the back here, we have a lot of different things, which may look a little bit stressful, but I promise it's way easier than you think. You basically just have to track where the wires go, and it all works on inputs and outputs. So whatever synth you start with, it's going to try to automatically output unless you have the setting off. So right here, we're seeing that Malstrom is outputting straight to the audio out, which will, route it into whatever DAW you're using. So you can hear right here, coming out no problem. And then you can also, hear that if I detach this, no audio. So this is important to learn for if you need to troubleshoot why no audio is coming through. Next thing I'd probably add to a patch like this is an effect device. Now, Reason's got a lot of very good effect devices. I'd usually go with a Scream 4 distortion first. This is a very powerful effect, and I usually only use a few modes in this. So I'll show you a few important ones that I like. So you got overdrive, which can be good if you really want to have a powerful bright sound. And you got tube right here, which is more for crunchy stuff. And then tape, which I think is the best. You can Basically just add like a nice bit of compression to your sound, and if you turn it down right here, as in the compression, by the way, these are what the parameter 1 and 2 do. It's listed on the actual VST here. But yeah, usually I like to do that. And then warp can sound pretty cool sometimes. Can sound pretty gnarly, and digital is just your standard digital distortion, downsampling, whatever you want to call it. Which can be cool if you're using wavetables like sweeping square, sweeping saw, any of that, and you want to make some cool yo noises. At the moment, I'm just going to go for a bit of tape distortion, and I'll just show you the cut right here. So this is just your standard 3-band EQ. Usually I like to cut out some low end because I like to make my own subs. I don't use the sub of the original patch. So pretty much what I'll do is I'll usually stagger it like this so that you're bringing a bit more high end to your sound and you're taking out lows, but you're keeping the mids relatively tamed. And then the body right here is very important. I use this a ton. Basically, there's 5 different types, which are 5 different EQ shapes, I believe. And so what we have here is one of the shapes. And you can hear that the scale kind of dictates what position it's in. The resonance is, of course, the resonance of the filter. Yeah, lots of cool options there. And something very important that I like to tell people about this is what the auto does, because the auto will basically react based on the gain of the signal that goes into it. So you can hear right now it's modulating it a little bit. If I turn the auto up, it's going to modulate it more. If I turn the volume up, it's going to modulate with the auto even more. Now so you get that more like wah-wah sort of sound. So usually I like to use a few different settings, so I usually go for something like this maybe. If I want something more valley, or if I want something more like metallic, I'll go like this and I'll turn it all down. Maybe just add it as like a little metallic texture on top. Or I'll just straight up boost the scale in the auto and have a little bit of resonance that there's a bit of a high-end boost. And then the next device I'm going to show off is the chorus flanger. This one is probably one of the most important devices you can use in Reason. Basically, you have your delay right here. I'm just going to set it on 2/4 rate so that it sweeps every like second quarter note. It'll reset pretty much. You can hear you're really getting that like seesaw effect now. And basically there's a few good positions you can put this in where it will sound really good. So down here, I use this for my song Soundboy. If you just add a little bit of negative feedback and have the delay down. Pretty nice. Around 40, and you have it a bit less, you get some like metallic sort of stuff. And then around here, around 66-ish. If you turn down the mod amount. Usually between like 60 and 80, you get like the real feedbacky areas. And then yeah, all the way out here, you got the really detuned areas, which I think sound really cool. In here as well, you've got multiple different types of EQs and compressors and all that, if you like to use those. You've got a digital delay line here. This can be pretty cool. This is, however, mono only. Yeah, usually I like to just chuck that on and then I'll put something like a reverb after it so that the delay tail is also stereo with it. And what I like to do here usually is I'll turn down the size a bit. And turn down the dampening. Just find a space or a size that sounds really good with the tone of the bass. And then I'll adjust the dry wet right here and bring it down and then sort of just subtly have it as a part of the bass to give it that stereo and that metallic timbre. I'm just going to bypass this delay now as well. By the way, if you ever want to turn off a device but still have it there in case you want it for later, don't turn it to off because it'll just completely cut the signal. You want to put it to bypass, that's very important. And then yeah, as you can see here, it's created a lot more wires, but if you just right click on the thing and then go and select your device, it should automatically route for you. If not, you can select everything and then go auto route device. Pretty sure that's how that works. Because I want to show you guys how to route stuff properly, I'm going to reroute everything. So as I told you before, you want to take your output from an instrument such as Malstrom, Subtractor, Thor, any of those, and it usually will say something like main output right here. And what you want to do is you want to bring it down into your next device that you want to route, which will be for me Scream 4, and then we want to output that into the chorus flanger, output from the chorus flanger into the delay line, output from the delay line into the reverb, and then finally from the reverb out into the main audio host. And as you can see, we were able to route it out with no issues. What I'm also going to do now is I will show you how I do my subs within Reason. I usually just do it all in one patch now. But basically what I like to do is I'll grab a channel EQ right here and just add it on the end. And I'm just going to use a high pass filter to take out everything from about 120 Hertz and below. And then what I'm going to do is I'll open my devices tab here and I'm going to drag a Malstrom onto here and hold shift at the same time. And so what holding shift does is it means that it won't route to anything. And so I'm going to use that same tech again and I'm going to bring in a line mixer, and then I'm going to route this into line 1 of the line mixer, or channel 1 of the line mixer rather. And then I'm going to route the line mixer straight out. And so now that I've done that, I'm going to copy over the pitch settings right here from our first bass. Just going to do that real quick. And then our modulator B settings as well. And I'm pretty much just going to make a copy of this, but not touch any of the other things and only use sine. Oh yeah, by the way, I do have mine set on only sine waves as my initial preset. There's a way to change it in settings up here. Usually when you load it up, it will load up with some other preset. So the way you usually get to this preset is you just click reset device here. And so yeah, I'm just going to do this real quick and just make that the same, -28. And then when we play it at the same time now and route it out, should have a bit of sub going. As you can hear, it's not very loud, so I'm going to boost the volume right here. As you can hear though, it is a little bit too stabby. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring down the level here to about 45. And then I'm just going to kind of balance them together. If you want to do a separate sub, I would recommend doing that if this is all a bit of a headache, because it is easier. But what this allows you to do is if you are an Ableton user, you can route everything to a instrument rack like this and control everything with one knob. So what I mean by that is like you can select like these two modulators right here. You can select these two modulators and then you can select like the index and the motion. And what that allows you to do now is you can map this to A, B, and then you got the index and the motion. Oh, I think I accidentally unmapped something. There we go. All right. So right here, you got the index, you got the motion, B rate, and A rate. And now what I can do is when I play this, I can modulate both of the Malstroms with one knob. It'll modulate the same thing if you configure it and map it correctly. Now that we've done this, I'm just going to turn on the sidechain and we'll just listen to it with the drum beat real quick. And yeah, pretty much that's how you make rhythm. My post-processing is usually pretty simple. I usually grab like a compression of some kind. Maybe a bit of a kilohertz disperser. And then what I'll usually do is I'll grab a clipper plugin of some sort, like G-Clip. And then I'll just kind of boost the bass right up until the lows are about a clip. But right about there, that sounds pretty good to me. And then what you can do is, if you want to, you can now use this instrument rack and add variations in the song. So you can do like a little change right here. Yeah, it pretty much is as easy as that. What I'd recommend that you do when you take the information you may have gained from this tutorial is I recommend that you try and experiment with everything you're able to. Try lots of different effects, lots of different routing methods and stuff. I would like if more people didn't just make boring square 4 and actually tried to change it up and use square 4 as a base, but then change it into something more original and more unique. Leave a comment down below if this was able to help you out with learning some Reason knowledge, and if you have any video requests, I will try and get around to covering them. If not, I do go more in depth on this on Patreon, where I'm putting up an advanced version of this video, where I'm going to be covering stuff like using the Spider audio merger and splitter to make unique basses, and also how the vocoders work, and generally how I do my more crazy post-processing. And I'm also going to be covering a variety of different concepts like mixing, mastering, and record box, and all that good stuff in future videos. So yeah, leave a comment down below with what you'd like to see, and thank you so much for watching.